Hello and welcome to HMG Network, broadcasting live from the Greater Washington, D.C. Metropolitan. My name is Freeman Singirankabo, and thank you so much for joining us for another Power Pack message on our interesting and series that we've been running for such a long time in pursuit of justice. Today's conversation, we are going to talk about the cases of Rusesabagina Idamange, Karasira Aimable, Iragena, Mitsindo, and many more in Kagame's Rwanda. And today's discussion is going to be powerful, educational, and informative. We hope that you will enjoy this broadcast and do participate for those of you listening to us and watching us from television and radio stations all over the world. So welcome. Without any further ado, I have my colleagues that we are going to have this discussion together. They are none other than my brother, Claude Gatebuke, the Executive Director of African Great Lakes Network, Aglan, and also my dear sister and queen, Delphine Yandamutso. And without any further ado, my brother, Claude Gatebuke. Welcome, brother. All yours.
And thank you for hosting us again on HMG Network. I'm looking forward to this conversation, difficult conversation, but looking forward to sharing with you and also Sister Delphine Yandamutso.
Hello everyone, and thank you, Claude. And also, as you said, my name is Delphine Yandamutso, and we again are happy to be here sharing this information. As Claude said, I guess as heartbreaking and as it is, so we will be sharing with you today. Thank you for being with us here today.
Just to set the tone for the conversation today, the cases, Freeman just named a whole bunch of names on the various cases that we're talking about today, including the case of Paul Rusesabagina, who many of you may know is the real-life hero of the Hollywood film Hotel Rwanda. The film itself, Rwanda is not a made-up location. It's actually a real country. It's not like Zamunda or Wakanda. It's actually a real country, a small country in Central Africa, which most people who've heard of Rwanda have mostly heard of it through the story of the genocide, the horrific genocide that took place in 1994, mostly through the film Hotel Rwanda, or about stories of the genocide. And Paul Rusesabagina's story is one of the central stories, or one of the most well-known stories of the genocide of 1994. He was a hotel manager at the hotel, the Milcolin, and he sheltered over 1,200 people in that hotel. And as someone who sheltered in various places from house to house hiding during that genocide, I can totally, I value the experience, I value his courage, and I value every single person that took a risk and sheltered people during that genocide. So many people survived because of neighbors and strangers who either intervened or sheltered them. And Paul Rusesabagina happens to be one of them. Paul Rusesabagina has also grown to be a very harsh critic of the government of Rwanda, led by Paul Kagame, who is praised around the world as a progressive leader, but really, in reality, a extremely repressive leader, but also an extremely violent leader who, to display, his violence, actually went out of his way in August of last year and kidnapped Paul Rusesabagina from Dubai, took him to Rwanda, tortured him, and in fact have also refused for long periods of time to provide him with his medication, so extension of torture, and put him under trial for terrorism. And this is a president who has actually terrorized the whole region, the whole Great Lakes region of Africa. Just ask the 6 million victims in the Congo, and you'll get the story of who the real Paul Kagame is. So with all of that, Paul Kagame has shown himself to be not only ruthless, repressive, but violent. In the case of Paul Rusesabagina is a display of what happens to so many other Rwandans. And today, the conversation is about Paul Rusesabagina and those other Rwandans who have suffered and who are suffering at the hands of Paul Kagame. And this is only a handful of cases. But remember, millions of lives have been taken by Kagame's soldiers in neighboring Congo. Hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost at the hands of Paul Kagame inside of Rwanda. And we'll get into that some more. I want to turn it over to my colleagues, Freeman and Delphine, to continue this conversation. We'll talk about the other cases.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Claude. Delphine, what could you give us in brief, what it is that you are going to share with us before we get into the meat and the bread of the conversation?
Thank you, Freeman, and thank you, Claude. So, as we said before, we'll be talking about, current news, what's happening with these cases. Some of you may know, some of you may not, but there are trials. They're called trials. So, I guess give some updates about those trials and the conditions of detention, how they're detained, and also the worrying issues and ongoing increasing numbers of disappearances, unexplained deaths, really terrible conditions. So we'll just be going into not details, but just a few headlines about what's going on. And Claude, if you don't mind starting with, Karasira's case, please.
Yes, the Imable Karasira's case is one of the latest cases of repression in Rwanda, and it's actually a very tragic story. I want to give a little bit of background on who he is. Imable Karasira is a university professor. He's a musician. He's also a YouTuber, and he survived the genocide in 1994 that I started out talking about, that Paul Rusesabagina intervened in so many people's lives. And interestingly enough, after surviving the genocide, Karasira's family they were killed. His mother, his father, his sister were all killed by the RPF, which is the ruling party in Rwanda, led by Paul Kagame. And after killing his parents, they wanted to silence him, which is what the government of Rwanda actually does. The government of Rwanda kills your people, they harm you, they do all kinds of harmful things, and then they turn around and they silence you. So he refused to be silenced. He gave his testimony through his songs. He also used his YouTube channel and other channels to speak about the experience, what he experienced in the genocide, and also after the genocide, how he lost his family. And instead of supporting him and accepting him, the government of Rwanda not only rejected him, but many Rwandan people rejected him through their actions or inaction. The inaction being silence around his case, the inaction being not, showing support, the inaction not pushing back openly and publicly against the system and the government of Rwanda for how they treat Rwandans and try to silence all of these inconvenient truths, all of these stories of suffering of people. So now Imable Karasira, because he's spoken out and has shared his story about surviving the genocide, but also the atrocities committed by the RPF and Paul Kagame's party and military, they put him in jail. Jail is one of the tools that's used in Rwanda to silence people. The other is death, assassination. The other is exile if you're lucky and able to get away. And sometimes you are disappeared. And so one of the things that also happens is the government runs smear campaigns using government officials, using government propaganda newspapers, and also using informal supporters who you visibly may not know that they're supporters. And in some cases, you may even think that they are critics, but they run all of these smear campaigns against the person. And this is something that's happened with each one of the people that we're talking about here. They pretend to support the person, and on the other hand, smear the person and demonize the person. Not only demonize the person, dehumanize the person. Not only dehumanize the person, they desensitize people to the suffering of the person. And so many people then run into the convenience and comfort of silence, or which is supporting the system that's destroying the lives of people. So Imable Karasira has been in jail since the end of May of this year. So it's been 3 months. He hasn't had a real trial, and his trial is not expected to be free or fair either. He's already claimed that he's been tortured in prison, and considering all the mental torture that he went through before he even went to jail, the harassment, the cutting off his livelihood, where the government intervened and had him fired from his university job, the pursuit, the constant interrogations, calling him into the investigators' offices, harassing him and telling him not to tell his story, not to speak about the genocide. All of those things were already happening. Now that they have him physically, he's claiming that they are torturing him. His case is not expected to be free nor fair. And that is the story of Imable Karasira. However, I think it's very courageous that he's actually been able to tell his story while he's alive, which is a distinguishing factor to me between him and another famous singer, Kizito Mihigo, who was assassinated in 2020, in February of 2020, before he actually publicly told his own story. But thank goodness, he also had the presence of mind to write his story and share it with the outside world, so that the outside world now can read his story in his book. And he put out audios of the ordeal that he went through. Some of the people who were involved in torturing Kizito Mihigo are also involved in denouncing and harassing Imable Karasira. In addition, these are people who actually survived in the Hotel Rwanda, the hotel that Paul Rusesabagina managed in 1994. So there are all of these connections. The government of Rwanda works in a network of surveillance, and they use all kinds of people, official and unofficial, to do all of this harassment. And then they use official channels to silence people through jailing, imprisoning, this lengthy pre-trial detention. Lastly, before I turn it over to you, Freeman or Delphine, Imable Karasira suffers from depression. This is something that he's been diagnosed with. And while in detention, his lawyers have requested that he goes to see the doctors, and the government of Rwanda has blocked those requests. That's the case of Imable Karasira in a nutshell that we're talking about. But we're not telling these stories just so that we share the information. We want you to also spread the information. We want you to share this information. If you're watching this on your local TV, please call a neighbor, have them come listen to it. If you're on social media, please share the links on Facebook and YouTube and all the other social media channels that you use or platforms that you use, so that these stories are spread out, so that the world is aware, but also that you take action instead of siding with the perpetrators, who are the government of Rwanda and Paul Kagame, the president.
Yes, thanks very much, Claude. And I guess this, what Imable Karasira and others, are being subjected to is what he's been talking about, is what he's been denouncing. I guess before I had talked about what they've been talking, what was, what's been happening. Freeman, if you don't mind talking about the case of Idamange, please. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Delphine. Just like Karasira Imable, just like Paul Rusesabagina, Ivonne Idamange, she's one of the most spoken of courageous women in Rwanda. And most of you do not know of this amazing mother. She's a mother of 4 children, and she has been in jail for exactly 192 days today. She's never been known before January 31st, 2021, at least in the whole world. Those of you guys do not know her, but for the things that she's done for these past 192 days have been incredibly courageous. She's been a mother who's been fighting for justice for the entire country in Rwanda, but in particular, she goes in to speak up and speak out against the hunger, against rapes, against people losing their properties, people being evicted on the streets, against all kind of heinous acts being committed by the government of Rwanda. She's been speaking against a bad leadership of the government of Rwanda. And we have been fighting against against all the people who are speaking against the bad leadership in Rwanda. But in particular, she has been speaking up while in Rwanda. As currently, I'm in Washington D.C. And in Washington D.C., I don't have any security issue physically. Speaking of. Idamange, along with the rest of the courageous men and women in Rwanda, have been speaking directly within Rwanda, irrespective of the fact that they can be jailed, they can be kidnapped or even killed. But before she was imprisoned, she has spoken up to all Rwandese people, telling them that, listen, I am well off in this country. I have been given the privilege of going to school. I've been given the privileges of having a good life, but I cannot live a life where I see my neighbors not having something to eat, not having food, not being able to take the children to school. I cannot live in Rwanda where the government is actually not leading the people. I cannot live in Rwanda where the president's whereabouts is unknown. You've seen how in COVID, during this pandemic season, Rwanda has been having so many cases of COVID-19. Children, mothers, older people, they are struggling. They have been struggling. Ivonne Idamange has been speaking up against all those things you will never hear, because Rwanda, it's a Singapore of Africa. You only get to hear the things that is being very nicely spinned, very nicely advertised. You see, visit Rwanda, but you never get to know places like Banyahe. It's one of those places where the people in the capital of Rwanda, in Kigali, are losing their homes, the homes that they have built themselves. They're being evicted out of their own homes because of corruptions, because some other people are taking off their properties. Women are being raped in the open. With videos, people taking cameras and videotaping rapes. Government soldiers, police officers are committing these crimes. And some thugs people. Idamange has been speaking up against all of that. And the reward that she received was to be put in jail. On February 15th, she was put in jail, not because of so much of speaking, but because of her boldness in speaking up against all those heinous acts being committed in Rwanda. But in addition to that, she spoke of the way the genocide has been used as a tool of repression, a tool of manipulating the global audience, a tool of showing how Rwanda is doing so beautifully, so well, when in reality, it is not the fact. She spoke of the president not being in the country, not being available, not leading the people, as if he's a shepherd, a missing shepherd. She spoke of the country being led as if it's like sheep without a shepherd. All of that have taken her, has been one of the reasons why she's been taken to, to jail. Today, worst of all, not only she has been tortured, she has been denied the very basic rights of any human being. As a woman in prison recently, she's been denied a shower, she's being denied some water, she's being denied just being able to have a decent life in the jail that she should not have been in. Worst of all, women, most of you have your monthly menstruation period. She's been denied the simplest hygienic product that you need when you're going through those periods. This is the Rwanda that you guys never get to hear about. This is the Rwanda that has justice, that has democracy, that has all these things we're constantly speaking of. This is Rwanda that you see on Arsenal. Visit Rwanda. But you don't get to hear about how if you are not rich, if you are not connected to the government, life is a struggle. Life is hard. Life is unfair. Very little justice. And for Idamange, torture, not having access to those basic human needs, and her children also not being able to be looked after. The freedom of speech that you hear of in Rwanda is really not freedom of speech. You see glamorous things being displayed over you. Very calculated and advertised sceneries. But the average person, the average citizen in Rwanda does not get those very advertised content that you see on your television. And today we are appealing to you on behalf of Idamange, on behalf of so many like Idamange, especially women in jail right now. The government of Rwanda want her to reconsider speaking up against those heinous acts being committed, speaking up against, they want her to stop speaking up against those rapes, those people being murdered for no reasons, those who are being disappeared and kidnapped for no reasons. They don't want her to speak about the president of Rwanda not wanting to speak on behalf of the people. He has not met the Rwandese community in the open, yet he's able to meet the president of France. He's able to travel left and right. Some people even say the president of Rwanda is dead. Idamange also has spoken of that, because the leadership doesn't have the interests of the people in Rwanda. Now the government, given that they do not want any Rwandese person to think or to dream speaking off against the Rwanda, yet speaking off against President Kagame and the likes, she's being tortured. She's being denied those basic rights. And I just want to ask of you, especially those of you in the Western Europe, the freedom of speech is something that is inalienable to all of you. If I do wrong, hold that against me. Take me to court. But until proven guilty, I am innocent. Idamange has been denied those basic rights. And we just want to ask of you, is it wrong to speak up on behalf of the voiceless? Is it wrong to speak of a mother who's being raped in the open by a soldier, by a police officer? Is it wrong to speak of someone who's losing their home that they have built themselves on the sweat of their tears? Is it wrong wanting a child to have a meal, a decent meal? All those things are the fights that Idamange has been raging against in Rwanda, and consequently put to jail for these 192 days, most of which is being continuously tortured and denied those basic rights. And I am asking all of you to please look again on the Rwanda that you have no idea. The picture of Rwanda that is never presented to you all. Rwanda is a beautiful country. I was born there. And my colleagues, I love my country. But I dislike and I absolutely will not support injustices, regardless of where it's coming from. Idamange had said, she said that even if my life is taken away from me, I love my children, I love my country. This country has given me everything, but I will not stand. I will not sell out of my people. Today I'm standing here, I am speaking to you all also. I will not sell out of Rwandese people. We were given the privilege of being here in the United States, of smelling and testing the freedom, all kinds of freedom that the people in Rwanda cannot conceive of right now. I have the liberty to speak up right now. They cannot speak up right now. You end up dead, jailed, or kidnapped. There's so much to say about that. We can write books for years and years and years, and I just want to raise your awareness right where you are. It's very upsetting, but I want to appeal to all of you to please look at Rwanda for what it truly is, not the advertised Rwanda that is presented to you every single day. Back to you, Delphine.
Thank you, Freeman and Claude. Well explained, the cases, those two cases of Karasira and Idamange. And I guess for me, the saddest part is that, what I've been talking about before they were jailed, what they are going through now, what they're being subjected to, torture, harassment, that their families and everything that they're going through is still going, it's still happening. Instead of, I guess, learning or changing, improving the conditions, we hear on a daily basis, how the people are suffering. They are suffering, they are in pain, they are experiencing all these injustices on the hands of the authorities. We hear of people who are, beaten in public, in broad light. Women who are stripped of their clothes in public, humiliated, denied their basic needs. We hear of torture, like ongoing torture, ongoing deprivation of food and basic needs in jails, especially women. Like Freeman said, we're calling all people, especially women, get out of your comfort zone, get out of your, I guess, luxurious everyday life, even normal sort of basic needs. And think of those women who are not only jailed, without trials, without fair trials, but also tortured and mistreated, denied the basic needs, denied the basic rights. Even with that, some of them have been jailed for years without any sort of case. And they're being tortured. Can you imagine that? That's the lowest of the lowest. If there's no human dignity, there's no human rights. We hear of people, every day on a daily basis, committing suicide or being killed or being shot by the authorities, being mistreated by the authorities. And this is happening on a daily basis, and it's increasing. It's not decreasing. It's not improving. It's worsening. And we hear, all this. This is not heard. This is not heard outside of Rwanda. Everyone needs to, I guess, sit back and consider, what if that was you? What if that was your family member or your loved ones who are being mistreated, who are being denied the basic rights, the basic needs? I guess, Claude, if you can speak about, the Mitsindo Viateur and the other cases, please.
There are so many cases. Yeah, we can talk all day. And this one has a little bit of a uniqueness to it. And just a little bit more, again, these are highly contributing citizens. And if they were in any other country, this would be highly valued people. We talked about Paul Rusesabagina. We talked about Imable Karasira. We talked about Idamange. All who are great contributors to society. This person, Mitsindo Viateur, is he's actually a leader of the youth. He trains young people. He forms young people. He keeps young people out of trouble. And I'm talking about children in elementary and high school, and is just made a great contribution to the youth of the country, meaning he's also making a great contribution to the future of the country. But again, he was stalked. They stalked him on social media and framed him with these false claims of criticizing the government, although that should not even be a crime. No one should be jailed or harmed for just criticizing the government. So they arrested him in the middle of November of last year, specifically November 17th, 2020. To this day, no one has seen Mitsindo Viateur in court or anywhere in public. This is preposterous. This is unconscionable to have somebody in pretrial in pretrial detention for almost a year. In 3 months, it will be a whole year since Viateur was first arrested, and no one has seen him in public. Again, this case is not only alarming in the way it's happening, but also the fact that it's not unique. I want to quickly speak about another case that is developing right now. There is a young man who also is of similar background. He's similar to Karasira's background, survived the atrocities, the war, and the genocide in 1994, and has been talking about how the government of Rwanda turned around and there were troops belonging to the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, which is the ruling party in Rwanda, killed his family. What did they reward him with? They recently, his wife went missing, and now Gilbert Shyaka has been missing. Gilbert Shyaka is also new. He's a YouTuber. YouTube has become a major voice for the voiceless in Rwanda. He brands himself as the voice of the orphans because of losing his parents and his loved ones in the war and the genocide. And he has opened so many hearts. Him and Imable Karasira and Idamange, they've opened so many people's hearts. They've healed so many people's wounds because so many people are living with this type of stories that they cannot tell. But again, Gilbert Shyaka is missing. Gilbert Shyaka is also an artist, by the way. He's a musician. He's a talented musician. There seems to be something about musicians and how the government of Rwanda just hates any kind of message that goes through art and also the use of YouTube. And unlike, for example, like Mitsindo Viateur, was arrested because of posts he made on social media. Just imagine in any country, somebody going to jail for posting on social media, somebody going to jail for speaking on YouTube about the pain of losing their loved ones, about the pain of losing their parents, about the pain that other people are feeling. And instead of finding a way to heal the people's hearts, the government actually is looking for ways to continue to do harm. And this is something that's been happening since the very first invasion by the RPF in Rwanda in 1990. This has been going on for 30 years, 31 years now. And the Rwandan people are basically in an open air prison where you cannot speak freely. And again, this case, the Mitsindo case, shows that no matter what you contribute to society, it's you're punished for simply not towing the line of the government, and especially for not for speaking out in the public. However, millions of people who have gone missing or who've been killed or who've gone to jail in Rwanda actually haven't said anything. So it's not an excuse for anybody to remain silent. Anybody that remains silent, anybody that sees these things and does nothing is a part of the destruction of the people. And silence is violence. Silence only helps the perpetrator. And we want to make sure that no one remains silent when you see these testimonies. We are here to provide this testimony because we are privileged to have the platform and the ability to share these stories on behalf of the people who are going through them. And we ask all of you to turn around and do the same. So I was just speaking about people who've been punished for broadcasting their messages over social media and YouTube and things like that. Let's kind of shift it over to the journalist. What happens to the journalist in Rwanda, Freeman, when they do their jobs, which is to inform the public and make sure that they get right and they are well informed, no matter what or whose advantage or disadvantage it is, in terms of the information that they put out.
Thank you so much, Claude. As most of you may not be aware of, in Rwanda right now, the only thriving journalists who are actually pro-government. What does that mean for those of you? They're speaking, they're dancing, they literally speaking to the rhythm of what the government is saying. And currently, they are literally zero to no journalists in Rwanda who speak up without being jailed. A perfect example, one of the prominent, bold journalist who's been paying with his life for speaking up against the things of which the government does not necessarily want to be put up. His name is Kuma Diedone. He was put in jail for almost 1 year for speaking up. Was taken to court, and the court dismissed his case. Literally, for speaking up. A whole entire year being housed in a jail that you do not belong in. And because of that, now the government makes sure that every narrative of a journalist or the wannabe journalist is being carefully scrutinized to ensure that the rhetoric speaks well or highly of what the government is doing. And currently...
Freeman, I just want to make sure that we highlight the fact that he also shared with the public that he was tortured during that 1 year in detention.
That's right.
For no crime.
That's right. That's right. And this is the Rwanda again that is being portrayed as the darling of the United States, the darling of the West, the very best friend of the European nations all over. The entire Africa praises Rwanda. There's nothing wrong praising your own kind. It's fantastic, it's beautiful. I am for it. But today is not the case. Imagine us here on this network just spinning stories after stories after stories after stories of what seems to be the actual reality. But in all truth, life is different. So journalists in Rwanda are being scrutinized, are literally being asked to walk, to breathe, to sing the song of the government of Rwanda. It is almost impossible for you as a journalist to freely speak, to develop a story, to put it out with all facts, and you not receive the wrath of the government of Rwanda. And this is another reason why I am asking all of you journalists out there to boldly speak the truth as you discover it. Even when you make errors or mistakes, boldly speak up in the open the same way you pull all the information out there. It is unconscionable for you to say you are the voice of the people, but never speak one word of truth on behalf of the people. The very few journalists who are doing the best to speak up the truth, they're running through hurdles after hurdles after hurdles after hurdle. They cannot work the same way all of you in Europe, in the United States, in South America, or the rest of the continent can actually do work. They do not work the same way that, like we do. What kind of freedom, what kind of democracy do you speak of, do you praise, when you cannot actually communicate the right information to the public, the right message on behalf of the citizens, when the only rhetoric, when the only narrative that is desired by the government is the narrative that themselves are manufacturing, and they're ensuring that if you want to do business in Rwanda as a journalist, you must sing to the song that the government of Rwanda is issuing. I want to challenge every journalist out there, especially those in Rwanda. Even if it means that you lose your life speaking the truth and on behalf of the voiceless, even if it means that you go to jail, that's the duty. That's what you have signed up to do.
Amen. In the words of Karasira, he said that when you speak, you die. And when you remain silent, you die anyway. So you might as well speak up. You might as well speak the truth. And please, diluting the truth is also lying. When you take the truth and put and insert some lies into it, you're not truthful. And the media is an eye of the people. The media is the journalist is an eye of the people. They provide the information that helps the people make decisions and make life-affecting decisions. A responsible journalist does not dilute or filter or publish lies. But
that's not the case today in Rwanda. Every news that's pulled out has to be properly scrutinized and is usually sanctioned. Anything that is not that hasn't been verified, you put it out, the next day you end up in jail. If you're lucky, they don't kill you. And we're not saying this to badmouth the country. We were born there. I was born there. If anything, we will be spending 1 hour, 2 hours speaking of all the great things of Rwanda, but that's not the case. We would also be in the same bucket as those who are being paid to speak the truth, to speak the lies, to advertise the lies. Rwanda has a machinery that runs very well, that advertises the country. They have the strongest lobby in Africa. Why do you need a lobby if the truth can speak for itself? Why do you need image consultant if your image is clean? If your image is dirty and not clean, then you need that image consultant. All we ask is you as a journalist, stick to the rules. Speak up. Write the truth. Speak of the truth as it is. Not as it's been spinned or given to you to spin it. Back to you, Delphine.
Sorry, thank you very much, Freeman. And I guess the fact that journalists, who stopped, not only them who are stopped to do their job, but also the public. The public has been subject to these, fear tactics. So it's like a whole, nation, or it's a whole, throughout all the levels. From the basic levels where these tactics are used to silence them, to stop them from talking about their basic rights, their basic needs, their basic issues their needs, that they are unable to voice them. And when they do, they're subject, the same as these journalists and these, people we've been talking about. It's becoming a general, like a whole country thing, where everyone is subjected to that fear, that ongoing fear of what's going to happen when I talk about my real issues. What's going to happen when I talk about my family issues? What's going to happen to me or to my family when I talk about, the injustices that were done, towards me? And it's worrying, and it's also concerning that no one is talking about these things. And we see this increase in mental health issues, like a huge number of mental health issues which are not even treated as well. The health system, I'm not even going to start talking about that, but mental health issues is sort of ignored. We think the authorities, they think about, if they don't talk about the issues, they think they're going to disappear somewhere, but they're not going to disappear. There's a widespread trauma. There's trauma from, the war, the genocide, the before that, after that, and ongoing issues, like normal everyday lives that, that's affecting people, and it's not treated or recognized or acknowledged. So we see this increase, in mental health symptoms, including suicide, like I talked about before, on a daily basis. Someone who's to commit suicide in the public, someone who's killed, and suicide is blamed. There's so many scenarios. Increased violence amongst the population. Family members killing each other. Like there's increased violence, and it's not condoned. Like it's not accepted by the authorities, and some of it is even committed by the authorities themselves. Like from the very basic level. We see people like increased substance abuse, like in a very, very bad, sort of level. And they think it's fun, or I don't know, they don't address it. We see all this self-medication through, all different of sorts. So it's I don't know even how to describe it, but the people are hopeless and helpless. Like it's like, even the journalists or the people who are supposed to talk for them or to advocate for them, they are silenced. So there's this widespread, like a torture, mental torture for the whole population, for everyone from, basic, I guess, level to up. So everyone, please just, get out of your comfort zones, speak about these truths, because this is someone's daily life. Being ignored, tortured, physically or mentally, denied the basic rights, denied the basic needs. Claude, it's worrying the way that it's increasing, and there's so much we can talk about. And unfortunately, like Freeman said, it's a very, very, very long list.
Yes, Delphine, you're right. And the reasons for this mental health, the torture continues of the people. And so the mental health effects continue. We're talking about people being jailed for simply talking about their trauma. But there's also the disappearances. I just want to, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the other cases, the disappearance of people even outside of the country. Let me start there. There's a case in May of this year of Cassien Ntamuhanga, who was previously imprisoned. So all of these cases, it's like you can connect all of these dots with cases in Rwanda. Cassien Ntamuhanga was jailed with the famous gospel singer that I talked about earlier, Kizito Mihigo, who was tortured by people in Hotel Rwanda, the hotel that Paul Rusesabagina was managing and sheltered people in 94 during the genocide. And some of those same people are also engaged in the harassment of Aimable Karasira and Ivonne Idamange. Some of them, they claim and brand themselves around the world as actually a type of, they've forgiven the perpetrators, when in fact they wouldn't even forgive somebody for simply telling the truth about their own experiences. So Cassien Ntamuhanga was previously jailed in Rwanda, and he escaped the country. He was a refugee in Mozambique, and in May he went missing. And this is not a unique case. Again, people have gone missing in so many various countries in Africa. We talked about the kidnapping of Paul Rusesabagina. People have been kidnapped in dozens from places like Uganda, Kenya, Zambia, in the Congo by the thousands and the millions, by the thousands and hundreds of thousands. And in other countries, in Tanzania, everything surrounding Rwanda and beyond, even as far down as, countries in Southern Africa, people are being kidnapped by the government of Rwanda. People are being assassinated by the government of Rwanda, whether they speak or don't speak, because the government of Rwanda went and wiped out refugee camps, hundreds of thousands of people who hadn't spoken, and killed millions of Congolese people who hadn't spoken about Rwanda, who could give a, about the government of Rwanda. They killed them. They killed children. The majority of people killed in the Congo are children under the age of 5. So this government of Rwanda goes after people everywhere. So speaking of young people, there's a whole generation, our generation, Delphine and Freeman, has been a big target. There's a study that showed that nearly 600,000 people, that's more than 500,000 people, between the age of 10 and 25 in the years 2005 to 2017. So a 15-year gap. So anybody who was basically born between 1980 and 2006 or 7 was targeted, and nearly 600,000 have gone missing. They are unaccounted for. And we know the government of Rwanda goes around and they pick children out, children up off the streets to keep them clean for the tourists, for the visit to Rwanda, as Arsenal is doing and PSG is doing, for the foreigners who don't get to actually see the real Rwanda, they only get to see what the government is showing them. That is a whole generation wiped out, gone missing from inside of the country, but also outside of the country. People are going missing. People are, as I said, the case of Cassien Ntamuhanga, it's been 3 months. He's nowhere to be found. Mm-hmm. There is a poet, Bahati Musa. He's been missing since February, 6 months now. Bahati is a talented poet, and we hope that he will be found alive. But he was inside of Rwanda, and the government of Rwanda prides itself on security. They also have a high level of surveillance, as I said, using formal and informal agents. People who are paid and people who are not paid. People who are in uniform and people who are not uniform. People who you would know that they're surveilling you, and people you would not suspect, including friends and family members. And this is a guy in Rwanda, you can't simply go missing. It's a very small country and it's highly controlled. And he's been missing since 6 months ago. He too must be returned. And he must be returned alive. The government of Rwanda must be held accountable for all these disappearances inside and outside of the country, especially when it comes to people who have criticized the government, which Bahati and Ntamuhanga had done in their poems or as activists and journalists. So some of the responses by the Rwandan people, though, has been very encouraging. We've got activists, who speak out and tell the stories. We've got so many people using their social media platforms and telling the story, but we need Rwandans to actually share these stories with the world and start sharing these in languages that the rest of the world understand, including English and French and Spanish and Chinese and other languages. we also have people who have really taken it a step, taken it up a notch. There are two brothers who went missing in 2019. The reason they were targeted was actually because one of their brothers, Mr. Noel Zihabamwe, based in Australia, was asked by the government of Rwanda to be an agent for the government of Rwanda in Australia. As I said, the surveillance is well beyond the borders of Rwanda, and it's well beyond the continent of Africa. Here in the United States, here in North America, they have agents surveilling us. We have clips of the people who surveil us. On this very network, HMG has captured some of the footage of those people who follow us, who stalk us. And we might actually see them next week. I'll give you a little preview in a little bit. But Noel Zihabamwe refused to be an agent of the government of Rwanda. They turned around and they took his brothers, and no one has seen them since 2019. It's been 2 years. One of the most encouraging response was how Noel has handled it. He's made it very public. And there is a lawsuit at the UN for the government, against the government of Rwanda on this very case. That isn't the only case. There's also the case that was filed by Paul Rusesabagina's family with the UN on enforced disappearance. These enforced disappearances by the government of Rwanda, people are not taking it lying down. And this is what's going to bring about change. But the Rwandan people, as the saying goes, God helps only those who help themselves. And it's encouraging to see people who actually get up and speak up. Even the people inside of Rwanda, they're speaking up, they're sharing videos. And by sharing those videos, which is the thing that I talked about earlier, where Kizito Mihigo, for example, shared audios and his writings, they are crying out for help. They're asking people to, hey, speak up, fight for me if they take me out. And those who are doing that, we salute them. We applaud you. And those who take these messages and share them, we applaud you also. And as we get closer to wrapping up this conversation, I do want to share with, turn it back over to you, Freeman and Delphine, to talk about, I just talked about the response by the Rwandans, but we also need a response, from our audience. What can the audience do? What should our audience do? And also those who are in position of influence and power who follow these programs, which we know they do. What can you say to them?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Claude. There's so much that you as an audience can do, us included. First and foremost, most of us who are outside of Rwanda, I'm in the United States, the majority of us, we do have the privileges of having other citizenships. So which means use your rights as a citizen of whatever country that you are in right now, and speak to your legislators of what's happening to Rwanda, especially. Rwanda received close to 50% of donation in funds from all kinds of countries around the world. The budget of the country is being supported by foreigners. So if your country, if your nation is one of those nations that is actively helping Rwanda, speak to your legislators, speak to the leaders in your country of what's happening in Rwanda, especially those of you who have who have Rwandan, who are Rwandese of descendants. Why do I say this? Every single taxpayer, even though you may not know where your tax dollars is being used for. If someone is being killed out of the money that's being given to Rwanda and it came from whatever country that you are from, you have a responsibility. You have indirect responsibility to what's happening in Rwanda. And so I want to appeal to all of you to be active, speak up, find out what it is that your country is doing to help Rwanda and get in touch with those people, ask them if they know of what's happening in Rwanda, beyond what the government of Rwanda is presenting to them. Secondly, we've noticed that the social media is one of the cheapest tools that we can share information. If you have something to say, share it with us. Don't spread the rumors, but anything that is accurate, share it, share it, share it, share it. And also remember that you were born and you are going to die. The fear of speaking up can only continue to oppress you. If you do not speak up because of fear, right now most of us, most of Rwanda's descendants, they have families in Rwanda, even right now as we speak. So one of the amazing lines that the majority use they use as an excuse of not speaking up is that I have a family in Rwanda. All of us, we have families in Rwanda, yet we do speak up. I am responsible for my words and my action, not my extended family member or family members, depending on whether you have one or more. And I want you to remember that if really Rwanda is one of those nations that respect the rule of law, that respect human rights, they are not going to use your family members as as a means to silence you, even though, let's be real, that's what's happening right now. But I want to let you know that also silence, you being silent and not speaking up of what's happening, it's enabling the Rwandan government to continue doing what it's doing right now. So do speak up, do reach out to your legislators from all, from whatever countries that you are in. Get in touch with a lot of these nonprofit organizations taking place in different projects in Rwanda. Stop sending the money in Rwanda. Today, I want to submit to you that if every single Rwandese person, every single friend of Rwanda who's sending money in Rwanda would stop for 1 month, just 1 month, the situation will turn around at 180 degrees. So we are enabling.
We saw some of that, Frame. We actually saw that when donor nations stopped giving aid to the government of Rwanda, when the M23 invaded the Congo, led by mass murderer General James Kabarebe, General Jack Nziza, and General Charles Kayonga, reported in the UN experts report.
Yes.
Donor nations withheld funds, and that led to a domino effect with the government. I've never seen a rebellion that strong go down that quickly. They totally, the M23 disappeared in the space of a month after displacing over 1 million people. So this works. But what we're saying is, you have the power, you have rights to demand that the government of the countries that you live in stop giving aid to the government of Rwanda. Your money, our money, is contributing to the repression and the killings and the mass murder and the invasions and the rapes and everything that's happening to the people. Your money,
absolutely,
my money,
absolutely,
is doing that. And you have the right to demand and make sure that you put a stop to that. Silence is not an excuse. Silence is perpetuating the violence, because let me just dispel the myth right here. Anybody that claims because you have family or whatever it is that you're protecting, that is why you cannot speak up. Millions of people's families were killed. They had never said anything. They had never spoken anything. In fact, even people who gave money to the RPF, people like Aimable Karasira, he was killed after funding the RPF. They turned around and killed him after he gave them money, and they used that money to kill people. So many people have ran away. Trevor Rujugiro, who is in the UN reports, funding rebellions in the Congo, who funded the RPF, they have taken his property. And so what your silence is perpetuating what's happening now. And I just wanted to dispel the myth that you being silent is going to protect your family. It's not. You being silent is going to stop the system from harming people. It's not. You being silenced is helping the system that is killing the people. Take action. You have the power. It's your money. It's your voice. Use it.
Yes, and also Claude can add that, not only the power, the right and everything, I can also add that it's your duty. It's your duty to speak out for, right. When you see that a fellow human being is being subject to what they're being subject to in Rwanda, torture. We've named it all. And I mean, we haven't named it all. We've named a few instances. They're being tortured, mistreated, like denied the basic rights, the basic needs, the basic anything you can think of, they're denied, and also they are stopped or they are punished for speaking about that. So it's everyone's duty to speak out, and to put yourself in your shoes, in their shoes, people who are there, it's think if the situation was reversed, if it was you, wouldn't you want someone to talk about what's happening to you? Wouldn't you want someone to come and rescue you? And wouldn't you want for that to stop? So just think about that, bring back that humanity where, don't only focus on yourself, don't think about yourself, think about the fellow human being. And that's where we're getting, because if everyone is silenced, because as I said before, the whole country is being systematically silenced and systematically subject to a trauma that, if you speak, that this is what's going to happen. And that's how mental health is increasing. That's how sudden deaths are increasing. That's how violence is increasing. And no one seems to be caring about the population. The voiceless, even the people who are trying to speak out, they are being silenced by all means. So wherever you are, speak out. Those donor nations, people who are part of Commonwealth, people who are the country who are in the UN, use the platform. That's why you are there. That's why you have that capacity. That's why you have those privileges. Don't pretend that nothing's happening, because we know that, and even that some international communities that, who are supposed to, I guess, talk about human rights. Some of them have been kicked out and no one is talking about that. What does that tell you? That these numbers, all these statistics saying what's happening. Yeah, it's good to sort of, talk about, this has to stop and this has to stop, but what else are you doing? Within your capacity, what else are you doing? So I call on everyone to take action in everyone's capacity. Don't keep silence, because when the table is turned, you need someone to speak for you as well. Yeah.
There are some quotes in the description of this. I just want to thank HMG Studio for actually pulling this and including these quotes in the description of this talk. That says, Cowardice asked the question, is it safe? Expediency asked the question, is it political? And Vanity asked the question, is it popular? But Conscious asked the question, is it right? This is by MLK. And he continued in that speech and said, but there comes a time where we must not care about whether it's safe, political, or popular, and just do the right thing. And yes, this is the time for us to do the right thing. And then lastly, as you were speaking, Delphine, actually that's what prompted me to look at these quotes. Freeman also talked about it, but especially in your words, it really reminded me of this quote also from MLK that says, an individual has not started living until he or she can rise above the narrow confines of his or her individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. Because guess what? Nobody, not a single person is unique.
That's right.
Unique enough to be outside of humanity, to be outside of a community, to be outside, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you convince yourself of your uniqueness, you're not that unique. Everybody's unique. So you're just like everybody else. Everybody's unique. So you're just like everybody else. These things that are happening to people, if you don't do something about it, they'll end up happening to you also. And there's a saying that you can ignore something, but you cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring what happened. And so let's not ignore injustice. Speaking of what the audience can do, I know there are members of the press that follow these shows. There is a press conference happening on Monday, organized by ADNA, the Africa Advocacy Network for Africa, along with Friends of the Congo, the African Great Lakes Action Network, Africans Rising, and many other organizations. And I remind you, ADNA brings together more than 200 organizations advocating for Africa based in the US. And Africans Rising is got over 30,000 members and over 100 organizations on the continent of Africa. During this press conference, we will be speaking in front of the Rwandan embassy in Washington, D.C. this coming Monday, the 30th. I believe this will also be broadcast here on HMG. We can check with the studio, but I'm pretty sure it'll be broadcast here live. We will be speaking in front of the embassy, the Rwandan embassy, about the repression that's going on in Rwanda. We will speak about some of these cases, including the Paul Rusesabagina's case, which has been a year since his kidnapping, about Idamange, about Mitsindo Viateur, about Imable Karasira, and others, and the role of the US and the role of Western countries in supporting and propping up the dictatorship in Rwanda. We'll talk about all of that, and we'll talk about what others can do. Please plan to be there. Again, it starts at 1 o'clock. It's 1 to 2. That's what time the press conference is. And we look forward to seeing the press there. And we look forward to all of you sharing that message and making sure that it gets out and that the rest of the world gets to see it. There will also be the ability to join remotely via Zoom for the press so that you can follow in, from wherever you are around the world and ask questions. Oh, sorry, I meant to include among the organizers is the Free Rusesabagina movement. So we look forward to, and if I forgot any of the organizers, I apologize here. The speakers will be from various organizations, and look out for a press advisory coming out either today or tomorrow about the about this event happening on Monday. And I'll turn it off to you, Freeman and Delphine. That's all my remarks. And just firing everybody up. Let's do something. Let's act.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. And I just want to thank the audience. Thank you for, I guess, listening in. And also we're hoping that you spread this message and you advocate in your own capacities, in every capacity you can. There's no more silence, The truth about the situation on the ground in Rwanda has to be told. And no one should be denied their basic rights. No one should be denied their rights or the justice, the injustices have to be stopped. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, HMG, for having us today. And thank you, Claude and Freeman, for, I guess, inviting me to this special topic, because I guess, as Freeman said before, we can talk about all the good things. We are not, big bad mouthing or anything, but this is the reality of our brothers and sisters in Rwanda. So thank you again, and we'll see you again next time. Freeman, to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Claude. Thank you so much, Delphine. And I want to also thank all of you audiences all over the world watching and listening to radio. We are going to increase these talks in various languages. Whatever language that you can speak. On behalf of the voiceless in Rwanda, I want to encourage you, reach out to us, and we will gladly support and speak on behalf of those voiceless. We have the means, we have the desire, and we are going to get it done one way or the other. So I hope that this broadcast has been very informative and educational to all of you. And I also do ask that you do share this message. Share it on behalf of the voiceless in Rwanda. Share it on behalf of those who actually are fighting for justice, peace, and just a decent life that we sometimes take for granted. Those of you outside of Rwanda, you have an obligation, especially as sons and daughters of Rwanda, sons and daughters of Africa. Right is always right. You don't have to be in the United States to enjoy a glorious life. A human being is a human being regardless whether you are in Rwanda or anywhere else around the world. If any one of these people is being deprived of those inalienable right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, why is it that you not saying anything when you fight against anyone who is going and who is attempting to relinquish or deny you those very rights that you fight each and every day? So with that in mind, I just want to say that it's been a privilege to have shared with you this broadcast. Those of you all over the world, please do send in your feedbacks wherever you are. And we ask that you tune in on Monday. As Claude Gatibuke had said, we are going to do the very best to bring you that broadcast, but also stay tuned to the rest of the conversation from the various series we are passing by on behalf of the voiceless in Rwanda and all over Africa. Thank you so much. I'm Freeman Singirankabo here at HMG Network. Until next time, goodbye for now.